Hey guys. Okay, so there is a massive misconception out there when it comes to renovations and extensions on traditional building character, aka character sites. Everyone, for some reason, seems to think that any work beyond the ridge of the house is exempt. Technically speaking, that's not correct. So I thought, hey, why don't I use this week's video to dive into the nitty-gritties when it comes to this sort of stuff. So we're going to talk about what actually is exempt, what's not exempt, and how you work around those triggers. So before we do that, I need to explain my setup that I've got going on here. When I first came up with this video idea last week, I had grand plans of raiding my nephew's toy box. I was going to create some super realistic houses. It was going to be amazing. Yeah, then COVID hit, then we had the lockdowns. You got to work with what you got, right? So just to explain what I'm trying to illustrate here, this weird and wonderful horse thing that my mum gave me a couple of weeks ago, it's a car. I mean, obvious, right? The tea towel, that's the road. This here is my house. So you got the roof form and then you got the core of the house here. So you guys are looking at the house side on. Now that I've established that, let's get into the details here. So when it comes to large character sites, I'm talking about post-1911 houses, not pre-1911 houses, but post-1911 houses, there is an exemption that allows you to demolish beyond the ridge, or technically speaking, the highest and rearmost ridge of the house. So basically it allows you, more often than not, to remove the rear portion of the house. There is also an exemption. Let me put my house back together very quickly. See, it would have been so much easier if I had building blocks here, right? Okay, house back together. There is an exemption also that allows you to extend off the rear elevation. So basically, whatever the rear point of the house is, you can then extend backwards. So that can be pre-demolition, or again, if we pull the house apart, get rid of the rear of the house, you can demolish back to the ridge and then extend backwards from there and basically recreate a new house. So let me put my house back together again. If only building and construction was this easy and quick, right? Okay, stay, good. So right now, there you guys are sitting there going, but hold on a sec, if you can demolish beyond the highest ridge, if you can extend off the rear facade, wherever that facade ends up being, then that's everything beyond the ridge, right? Like, I don't get, what are we missing? Well, what it doesn't cover is work to the side of the house. So let's imagine, for argument's sake, that these cutouts here in the boxes, they're the windows. And you want to, it's a bit of a wonky window, hopefully it works. Let's just get artistic. So let's say you want to do a weird and wonderful window there. That technically is not covered by the exemptions because it's, well, yes, it's demolition beyond the ridge, but it's not an extension off the rear of the house. It's work to the side of the house. So how do you get around this situation? Well, what we typically tend to do is if your window is just at that point there, we go, hey, why don't you demolish back to that point, show some additional demolition work, that then becomes your rear facade, and then you can extend backwards to incorporate that new window change. So we did that just the other day where the client wanted to change this window at the back there. Not too bad. What happens though if, let me reach around. Really should have put a mirror up or something so I could see what I was doing, hey? What if you want to change a window that's all the way up here? Obviously you don't want to have to demolish that massive chunk of the house just to change one little window, right? Well, what we do in this scenario is we lodge an exemption certificate. So to qualify for an exemption certificate, you need to be able to demonstrate that the worker is minor and inconsequential. Obviously, in this situation, we can argue the outcome is exactly the same to the neighbours, to council, to anyone who's interested. Because we could legitimately demolish back to here, rebuild the house exactly as it is, and then go backwards from there. So what the neighbours end up seeing, what council ends up seeing is exactly the same. So it's minor and inconsequential. So if, however, you start doing major changes, unfortunately, you are going to trigger a DA, which leads me to one final point. Let me get my house extension back. The rear extension exemption, mouthful there, does not specify any limits in terms of where you go as you go backwards. So therefore, you could technically go out to the side. You could technically go up. You could do whatever weird and wonderful movements you want there. The key though is to make sure that you are extending, attaching off the rear facade or the rear elevation, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, whatever your demolition point is, starting point, you have to come backwards from there. So I had a situation the other day where the client wanted to wrap around the corner ever so slightly. He wanted to put a post that attached off the side here. So we're talking like 100 by 100, something really, really minor. Technically, because it is attaching off the side facade, it triggers. So what do? Again, we extend the demolition line back ever so slightly and then rebuild that work back from there. That's how we work around the triggers. Okay, I think that covers off everything I want to get across today. Moral of the story, or point that I really want to get across, is not all building work beyond the ridge is exempt. Demolition of post-1911 houses beyond the highest and rearmost ridge, yes, that's exempt. Additions off the rear elevation, yes, that's exempt. However, work to the side of the existing structure, that triggers, so therefore you need to look at potentially extending your demolition line back, applying for an exemption certificate, or worst case scenario, doing a DA. Okay, I think that covers off everything. As I always say, until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got three. Number one, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site-specific. You would be a silly Billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly Billy. Number two, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number three, what was my number three? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all. Bye.